Okay, everyone, if you'll take your seats, we'll get started. Um, my name is Ray Palmer. I'll just give you some time to get settled there. And today, what we're going to be doing is talking about the faculty handbook, a copy of which you were handed as you stepped into the room this morning. So, as everybody gets settled, with not much left to do, let's get started. Some of the topics we're going to be covering are, of course, the purpose of the handbook, employee work folder, behavioral expectations, standard operating hours, promotions, employee and student relationship conduct, discipline, equal opportunity treatment, safety and security, types of pay, types of leave, leave policy, promotion, filing a complaint, and of course, we'll end up with reviewing some of these same topics that we covered, and of course, some of the supportive references that contributed to it. So the purpose for why we're doing this, what we found is that in the past, although we've handed out these handbooks to everyone, not many of the teachers have taken the time to look and see what is actually in them. Usually because you're just starting or you've probably seen this handbook before, you probably just kind of throw it in a corner. But there have been revisions. I don't know if you noticed a date that was on the cover of the or the beginning of the slide. So as revisions come up, these dates will change, and we have added and sometimes modified or revised this handbook. So the purpose, of course, for this presentation is to provide an overview of the topics addressed in the faculty handbook pertinent to both management and faculty. And in doing so, we hope to promote honesty, integrity, social responsibility, hard work, trust, professionalism, and care. Please note that if you haven't done so already, there's a sign-in sheet in the back. This is to, of course, acknowledge that you have received a copy of the handbook and that you have received this presentation. So if you haven't signed in yet, go ahead and sign in before you leave this briefing. The sign-up sheet is in the back. Okay, let's start by talking about the employee work folder. An employee work folder will be established for each employee and will contain the following: the employee's information, of course, name, address, all those pertinent information. And this, of course, will be kept secure. Supervisor's comments, experience, awards, and education, a performance plan for that employee, the position's description that the employee currently holds, and of course, any training that is received by this employee. This is just a guide and is not all inclusive. One can, of course, put in other things that are pertinent, and the employee should know exactly pretty much or acknowledge what is in that particular his or her folder. Some of the behavioral expectations at the school is that all employees are expected to show up to work on time, dress professionally and safe, have their lessons prepared for the day, be ready to teach or carry out their duties or responsibility, have a good professional relationship with students, parents, and co-workers, resolve disagreements in a professional manner, and of course behave professionally, not only when they're on the school premises, but also in the community, as you are a reflection of the school. Standard operating hours, normal office and classroom hours is usually between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., not to exceed 40 hours per week unless given permission by the management or your supervisor. This is because anything beyond those times, if anything were to happen, like say something unsafe, you would not be covered under that because this would not be your normal duty time. For the teachers in the classroom, lectures should not exceed 50 minutes within an hour. And of course, breaks should be taken within the hour, every 10 minutes within the hour. So you utilize the full hour. And of course, a lot of this is at the discretion of the teacher, depending as you progress through the class. But these are just, again, guidelines that we use that you don't exceed or go beyond that. Of course, everybody's favorite time, lunchtime, is from 11 a.m. to 12 midday. And flex time for those teachers who are curious as to the administrative staff, They can work through lunchtime. We call this flex time, where uh, pretty much as long as 8 hours is covered during the course of the day for the administrative uh, personnel, they can stop and start and take breaks, so forth, from answering the phones or doing extracurricular duties like taking care of the kids and so forth, or answering parents' questions. So we allow the administrative staff to have their flex time. As far as promotions are concerned, this is contingent on the employee's ability to display competence to meet the job requirement and help the school meet its goals. Participate in directed training and development activities that are provided, or something maybe outside the school. This, of course, all this will be documented and placed in the employee's folder. Share knowledge gained from such training activities with coworkers and stakeholders, assisting training other employees, assume responsibility for self-development activities. So you won't have to always be reminded to make sure that you keep current or in your specialized area of teaching or expertise. Assure that their records reflect current training and development accomplishments. So, if for whatever reason something is missed in your record or you have taken training, you have to make sure that this is placed in your record or documented accordingly. Employee and student relationships. All employee relationships should always be professional in nature. Uh, I don't think we can delve too much into that, but if there's any questions about that, if you hold them or make a note of that, we can answer them at the end of this presentation. Employee or student relationships should never involve bullying, favoritism, harassment, hazing, or inappropriate public display of affection, meaning that, of course, husband may kiss his wife and say goodbye, but of course, knowing that students or younger students are around, one should be cognizant of how they are acting in front of them. As far as bullying, most of you may be thinking, well, this is only pertaining to students, but I've found that even what adults are just grown children, and we won't tolerate another teacher taking advantage of a teacher or exercising that type of a bullying technique in order to coerce or get somebody to do something that they want to do. Again, this will be addressed later if you have any questions. Harassment, that deals with, of course, sexual harassment or any type of harassment that would, of course, affect the production of the employee. Standards of conduct. Standards of conduct apply to both management and faculty members and constitute behavioral expectations based upon principle of ethics, trust, and public service. Conflict of interest activities to be mindful of are political activities, the use of official time, use of school property, financial obligations, outside employment, and receiving gifts. And I'll just touch on a few of these before we move on. We talk about political activities. You won't bring those your affiliation into the school is what we're talking about. So you won't use the time, your official time to ascribe to any political party or anything like that. When you come to school, it's time to learn, to teach, to pretty much cater to your students and do what you're supposed to do. Using school property for personal use, that is a no-no. And of course, financial obligations, you have to meet your financial obligations in your private life, and make sure that doesn't affect it overflowing into your professional life. Meaning that if bill collectors are calling here during the course of the day asking where is Mrs. So and so and how come they haven't paid the bills, this is something that now we have to get involved in your personal life because you're not meeting your obligations. Of course, outside employment, we don't stop anybody from doing this, but if it affects your productivity or your function in the school, this may be something that may be addressed. Getting gifts, there's a limit as far as uh, the cost of the gift. And again, we can talk about this and answer these questions after this presentation. What we're trying to do is that we don't want parents to try to influence teachers as far as paying them off for what they're doing, or having an area of favoritism towards their child as a result of the gifts that you're given. Nothing to say that you can't receive a token of thank you, but we have to be careful when it comes to things like this. So, this is what we're talking about. As far as discipline, disciplinary action is executed when employees acts or fails to act in accordance with governing rules or expectations. Uh, Enough said there. Is constructive discipline is intended not to punish, but to correct and develop and rehabilitate the employee. So constructive discipline, for the most part, is pretty much to change a behavior. Um, of course, disciplinary actions is self-explanatory, but of course, employees who feel that they have been dealt with unjustly may invoke a third party, meaning that they can talk to our human resource department or union representative to review whatever discipline that they think they may not be treated fair in that particular circumstance. So these things are open to the employee for them to take, and they can even go outside the school. They want to get private counsel. So this is not restricted in this area, but we know that these things will come up, and what we try to do is we try to resolve them as soon as is possible at the, of course, lowest possible level, and we'll talk about that. Equal opportunity treatment, management and the teachers union agreed to cooperate in providing equal opportunity to all faculty to prohibit discrimination because of age, sex, race, color, religion, or national origin. Hence the description of discrimination. So these are the things we try to avoid, try to treat everybody equally. Of course, faculty members have the responsibility to advise management of any violation of employee rights they encounter or observe. And also, management is not exempt from it, but they have the responsibility for remedial or disciplinary action concerning any violations. They also are responsible for providing collateral EEO counselors based on a list provided by Human Resources or an established union. And of course, use personnel policies, procedures, and programs to resolve EEO issues. Allow the union to represent faculty members also in an EEO complaint. So if they request that a representative be there, if they think they're going to receive disciplinary action, they have that right to have that representative there in order to be there as a witness or counsel. Safety and security. To provide a safe and healthy work environment for all employees and faculty members and students. All faculty members will adhere to established safety practices, procedures as determined by law, policy, or rule pertaining to, of course, dress and grooming standards, use of any authorized equipment, working in certain environments, and of course, classroom safety in the event of an active shooter, fire, or severe weather emergency. Uh, we can probably touch a little bit on these. Dress and grooming, what we're saying is that when you dress and come to work, hairstyles and whatever the case may be, these styles should not contribute to any unsafe practices. So if your hair is going to catch on fire because it's too long or it's hanging in your face, let's say you're working in the lab as a science teacher, we would like you to dress appropriately and have the protective equipment that you need to have on as far as to protect you from being safe and also the students. Use of unauthorized equipment. If the equipment is unsafe or tagged accordingly that it is unsafe to use, you should not use that. Or if it's not even in the listing of equipment to be used, let's say in a lab, um, this equipment should not be used. They should be turned in for repair or replacement. Working in certain environments, such as labs, that goes without saying, but again, briefings will be conducted before the use of those pieces of equipment for our students. And of course, in the day and age that we live in with the active shooter, procedures are in place to where students need to know what to do in case of an active shooter, a fire, or a severe weather emergency. And the school will go through exercises in order to ensure that the students are aware of what to do when these circumstances come up. Everybody's favorite portion, types of pay. Of course, there's premium pay. This is, of course, described of as the pay that is agreed upon when accepting employment or being promoted. Overtime pay, requested by employee and authorized by management. So this is not a given. Again, if you're going to work overtime and you have to do stuff that is outside the 40 hours of the week, this has to be requested to management. That is, when we use the term management, I know we're using it as if we're not a school, but we're talking like the principals are those that are in authority to make those decisions. So, for the most part, you have to go and talk to these people and explain why you need this overtime in order to get this done. And of course, most likely, depending upon the circumstances and the fund availability, you'll get the permission to do so. Of course, keep in mind that you may need to have the amount of hours that you need to in order to accomplish these tasks uh, within or after the normal 40 hours. Compensatory time can be given in lieu of the overtime pay. And of course, again, this is contingent upon the workloads at the given time, meaning that we can't just, what you'd do is that you'd get for the same amount of time that you worked overtime, you would get it off, but you would not be paid. So let's say somebody works for 10 hours over the 40 hours, you would get 10 hours extra off uh, at another day when time itself permits. And if again there's any other questions, we can answer that as we move on. Types of leave. There is annual leave, which is just the normal leave that you take that you've accrued during the course of the year. There is sick leave, court leave, leave without pay, and of course, excused absences pending an investigation. Of course, the leave policy is that you will notify the principal, or as we use the term management, or your supervisor as soon as you know you need to take this leave. So don't wait till the last minute, because what has to happen is that we have to have substitute teachers that are there to take your place when you take your leave. So we have to plan accordingly. And that we're not asking this to get into your business for the most part, but just to that we can have a streamlined program here to where the students are not encumbered by your absence. Of course, you have to specify the number of days you request. And if you are going to take 4 or more days of sick leave, you have to provide a certificate or a note from that doctor or physician saying what was the reason for the excuse. Leave for more than 30 days, of course, have to be approved by the principal or board. But of course, if it's warranted, you shouldn't have to worry about it. If you have a broken leg or you got in an accident and you have to recover, it only makes sense that would make allowance for you to have your leave in order to recover from any circumstances like that. As far as promotions are concerned, we'd like to see our teachers move up and given the opportunity to be in managerial positions. So, of course, we have some guidelines that we have laid down for those who are planning to, of course, progress in their field. What we're looking for is that you perform at the next higher level of responsibility, meaning that you are able to function, let's say principal for a week or principal for a day. If you'd like to try that, I'm sure that we'll give you that opportunity to do so. Be competent and qualified in your current job position, so there's no need to move up if you're not even building a foundation in order to move up into another position. Maintain a professional relationship with coworkers, display ethical integrity and sound behavior. Never settle for, of course, status quo. Constantly strive for your self improvement and be a good example both on and off duty or work. These are some of the things that we look at. And of course, base all these things will be documented in your folder or any additional things that you have done as far as to contribute to the mission of this school. This will definitely help in this area. Filing a complaint. A grievance is defined as any complaint any employee has relating to the employment of that employee. Our recommendations here is that if you have a problem or a grievance, let's say it's with another employee, that you try to resolve it with that person first. You'd be surprised that it's not every time that you have to bring management into the situation. We try to resolve that at the lowest level. So that's what we're talking about here is before you go to management, that you try to personally resolve a problem uh, at the lowest level that you possibly can. And if it means confronting that person or talking to that person, that is what we'd encourage you to do first. Of course, use the chain of management if the concern cannot be resolved that way. And then, of course, we will get involved uh, to see what we can do to remedy the situation, being a neutral party in that resolve. Uh, of course, if the problem is with the management itself, we recommend that you go to the HR or to the union representative outside the chain to make a formal complaint. That way, it can be handled accordingly. Your representative then would be your union representative, and they will know how to guide you as far as how to resolve this situation. Again, every effort will be made to settle the complaints and grievances at the lowest level whenever possible. So we won't run to the newspapers and we won't run to the TV stations because somebody did not put the right color napkins on the break table for the faculty. We'll try to get those things resolved in house and as best as we can before we move on. So we've come to the end of our presentation. Of course, some of the topics covered. The purpose, we spell that out for you. Employee work folder that would be established. Behavioral expectations. Standard operating hours. Promotions. Employee and student relationship. Conduct. Discipline. Equal opportunity treatment. Safety and security. Types of pay. Types of leave. Leave policy. Promotion. Filing a complaint, and of course, we're in the process of reviewing the topics that we've covered. Some of the supportive references, I'll just have you view those because I know that you have the handbook in your possession. These are some of the things that you can refer to if you would like, as far as guiding you even in the classroom. Civil Service Reform Act. This is something that was taken uh, out of course, the civil service, where a lot of the procedures that were mentioned are unique, were brought to the table in this presentation. And these references, I should say, are very interesting because they help to define what we are as a school. So with that, we're going to end the presentation. I put my name up there on the board if you'd like to confront me, not necessarily in public, but maybe in private if you have a question. There's my contact number that is provided for you. And remember that this is a living document. So as circumstances come up, uh, you will see on the front that date on the front of your book, the handbook that has been handed out. As things come up and there's revisions, you'll see that date change. So if there are any questions, I will entertain them at this time. And if you have any feedback, we'll also entertain those at this time. So with that, maybe this is a group where you'd like to talk to me privately, and that's fine. We thank you for coming to this presentation, and we will probably review these ever so often, these topics, as you continue to work with us as a family in this school. Thank you for your time.